Good morning. It's 10 o'clock in the morning in Washington, and we welcome you to this webcast presented by the Ukrainian USA Foundation and the AHA Network. The AHA Network is the AHA Network, also known as. My name is Kupchinsky. I'm with the Jamestown Foundation, and I write on energy-related topics for various publications. During the recent visit of U.S. Vice President Joe Biden to Ukraine and Georgia, one of the key topics of discussion was energy security. This topic continues to be a critical one, which can determine the economic well-being of our allies in Central and Eastern Europe, and in the long run have an enormous impact on the future viability of the transatlantic alliance. Today, the AHA Network has invited two very well-known experts on European energy security, Ambassador Keith Smith and Alexandros Petersen, to give their views on these matters and to answer your questions. So, my question to both guests is, does the European Commission have any realistic solutions on how to change Central and Eastern Europe's dependence on Russian gas? As a follow-up, can you shed any light on the German-Russian relationship and how this weighs in on EU energy security? Keith?
Well, I think
Alexandros.
Sure. Well, thank you. I'll answer the first question, I think. Does the EU Commission have any good options? The EU Commission has some very good options if it is able to bring the resources it has to bear together in order to put pressure on countries that are within the European Union, I think, that are more okay with overdependence on Russia when it comes to natural gas. At the same time, what I find to be most important when it comes to leverage against that, Russia, when it comes to its being the supplier that is creating that overdependence, is creating alternative routes and pushing for them in a manner that is serious, that is tapping into alternative suppliers in the Caspian region in the Middle East, and doing so through strategic countries like Turkey, through the Black Sea region, which allows for a two-pronged, if you will, objectives. Number one, to better Europe's energy security through reaching new resources and doing so in ways where there is not Kremlin control over them. But number two, also allows for greater engagement with the countries of the greater Black Sea region, the new Eastern Partnership countries of the European Union, and through energy development allows for not only a European Union energy policy that is strategic, but a genuine European foreign policy. When it comes to the Eastern Partnership, energy is central to that. We must not lose sight of the fact that one of the greatest attractions for the Eastern Partnership countries is, in fact, the hungry consumers in the European Union that need alternative gas and that need to diversify away from overdependence on Russian resources.
dealing with your questions, I agree with Alex that these that if there's the political will within the European Union, they can certainly deal with these issues. I am a little more skeptical about the will of the European Union. I think in the past it's been an organization which has been divided between the old member states and the new member states, and while we earlier expected the European Union membership for the new democracies of East Central Europe to provide a soft security, I think today we realize that in fact soft security is not something that most of the West European or regional members of the EU are really into. And NATO, of course, is focused at this moment on Afghanistan and out-of-area issues. I think the EU has been very divided over the whole question of how to cooperate with Russia and whether to react to hostile Russian actions against East Central Europe, particularly in the energy area. We find that you have these energy cutoffs that take place, particularly in East Central Europe, and there's no reaction on the part of the European Union, no real reaction, except when it affects Western Europe, their energy markets. And we had the cutoff, you could see the cutoff of January of 2006 of gas through Ukraine, and the reaction by the European Commission was very, very weak. The cutoff this last January was more significant in Europe, and the reaction has been a little stronger on the part of the EU, but still not all that strong. I think countries such as Germany continue to maintain a cozy relationship with Russian leaders and Russian energy companies at the expense of transparency and a democratic government in Eastern Europe. The Nord Stream, I think, is a great example, and Alexandros is going to talk a little bit more about Nord Stream, but I think that's an example of Germans' business interests overriding really the security interests of East Central Europe. The German Social Democrats continue to insist that these cozy policies toward Russia will result in a more benign Russia, ignoring the fact that Putin has taken Russia in the opposite direction during this whole period of coziness. The Goethe Group, there's a Goethe Group in Brussels of German parliamentarians that meet regularly behind closed doors with Russian energy representatives, and the East Central Europeans are not privy to that information. Alexandros is going to talk more about Nabucco, but I remember the Nabucco summit this last spring in Budapest, where the European Commission and the German delegation, in fact, were pretty much silent, signaling their opposition to anything other than the Russian pipeline projects. And even a lot of top officials in the EU Commission who are charged with dealing with energy issues don't seem to be interested in keeping Moscow, or only interested in keeping Moscow happy rather than in protecting the fragile new democracies of Central Europe. And this coalition within the EU of Germany, Austria, France, and Italy block efforts by the EU to try to create a common front. And these wealthier states are interested in their own issues of how do we maximize the benefits to our energy companies. And these are countries that have access to alternative sources through the Mediterranean or through liquefied natural gas imports, whereas the East Central Europeans, which are more of a energy islands, don't have that. I think very interesting, three examples I'd cite, I think, of the EU failing to really deal with these issues. One is the Russian oil cutoff to both Latvia and Lithuania. They're members of the EU, but nothing has really been effectively done by the European Union to push back against this. Then you had this year, very recently, the EU trumpeted a big energy infrastructure fund of 5 billion euros, which then went down to 3.8 billion euros. And we find that most of the money for energy infrastructure and energy security went to Western Europe, not to the countries of East Central Europe that needed it the most and who suffered the most from Russian energy cutoffs. And my question is why? Now, the Eastern and Central Europeans need to do more to promote transparency in their own governments and within their own energy companies, and they have to be more active within the European Union, especially in the European Commission, of pursuing their own interests in developing a kind of a coalition of countries that are more interested in energy security. I'll leave it at that, and then maybe Alex, or give it back to